Today we're going to do a rerun of what I would label a very important show, because we're going to dig into, once again, off-season, now that all the World Championships are over. The reason this subject is so important, as you might have heard me say so many times before, but if I had to find one biggest predictor of an athlete going through to a whole new level, a breakout season, the one thing I always identify for athletes of every level on the spectrum is a really well executed off-season. It is the biggest predictor. And so now that we are mostly over with the season, I think it's a really good time to bubble it up to the surface. In September, we talked about these, but I want to bring it back forward again for those that have just finished the World Championships, or, of course, if you want to go back and listen to why this is such an important phase. And at Purple Patch, this is my favourite time of the year to welcome people into the team. From the ground up, this gives us the best opportunity to establish the habits, get all of the frameworks in place, ensure that we're aligned on what success looks like, and help you excel. And so if you would like to reach out for a complimentary needs assessment, info@purplepatchfitness.com. This is the time. Even if you don't want to join right now, this is the time to have your needs assessment. Make sure that we can understand what your goals are and how we might help. Just reach out to the website. We'll set up a no-pressure call. And if nothing else, you're going to get some really helpful information to help you on your journey, not just over the coming months, but over the course of the coming season. Enjoy today's show. I'm Matt Dixon, and welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. The mission of Purple Patch is to empower and educate every human being to reach their athletic potential. Through the lens of athletic potential, you reach your human potential. The purpose of this podcast is to help time-starved people everywhere integrate sport into life. And welcome to the Purple Patch Podcast. As ever, Matt Dixon. And let me tell you what a season this was. Goodness me, I'm going to focus just on triathlon as I do this introduction. But of course, there is a magical world of endurance sports and even life performance beyond this. But in my main sport, triathlon, it's a hugely impressive year. At the pro level, we saw some incredible performances, a wonderful catalogue of racing across the T100 series, something that's bringing just a whole something different to this sport with some amazing performances and truly some of the best athletes in the world. We had an incredible IRONMAN World Championships in Nice, of course beyond the Norwegian 1, 2, 3, but what a great venue that is in Nice for a World Championship. And then the historic race, women's race in Kona. Goodness me, poor Taylor Knibb and Lucy Charles-Barkley. And just this weekend, one of the best 70.3 World Championships ever, including a repeat win for Hele and, of course, the redemption victory for Lucy Charles-Barkley. And this is just the pros. We also had some incredibly fast racing around the world. And for Purple Patch athletes, let me tell you, we had our most successful and empowering year of racing performance in the history of Purple Patch. Yes, over the course of the last 17 years, this year was our best year when we look at the broad range and how people did either their first race or going through to the next level, or breaking through adversity, or of course the suite of athletes that were on the podium and of course winning their age groups. And a big part of the why behind our success is off-season. In September, we released 3 episodes focusing around off-season. They were hugely welcomed at the time. We heard that they were very, very helpful. And of course, we know its importance. So we wanted to bring it back up to the surface today. Because at that time, we had a lot of athletes that were still racing. They still had their racing hats on, and that's understandable. And so we thought, why don't we take the main episode of off-season and let's bring it back to the surface today? And there's 2 reasons for this. Number one, if you're already in off-season, I'd highly recommend that you listen to this, because it's going to bring up and reinforce all of the lessons, the why behind why you're doing what you're doing right now. Establishing habits, the preparation, making sure that you're getting mental and physical rejuvenation, but ultimately putting the building blocks in place so that you can be successful. So if you've already listened to this episode, I would go back and listen to it. It is repeat education. It's very important. And then, of course, the second main reason is we had a lot of athletes that were chasing racing still. This is a great opportunity now that we are mostly, I hear you, folks that are doing Indian Wells in Arizona and the other races around the world. I know it's still coming, I get you, but mostly we're in off season now. So if you have just finished racing, this is the time for me to come back, hold your hand and say, hey, have a nice break, but this is why we're doing what we're doing. And so I hope that you enjoyed the show. It's off season once again. And of course, as ever, would love to hear from you. This is the time. In fact, this is the perfect time. You can have it all. You can have the rejuvenation, the focus on broader life and professional life and family and friends, and you can put the building blocks in place so that you can have a breakthrough performance. If you'd like a complimentary needs assessment, reach out to us, info@purplepatchfitness.com. This is the time. But without further ado, I bring you once again off season. It is the meat and potatoes. Yes, folks, the meat and potatoes off-season, as you know it, is dead. That is our theme of today's show. Now, over the coming weeks, we are going to be progressively building on this subject. We're going to take you all the way through until you are fully equipped to dive into off-season and ensure that you get all of the rejuvenation that you want, but also you set yourself up for a fantastic year over the course of the coming season. And so without further ado, let's dive in. We're going to talk about the model of off-season and why I say off-season, as you likely know it, is dead. When most athletes think of off-season, they default to one of two traditional models. Number one, a complete shutdown. And so they just turn their back on the sport. They go rogue, random. Or number two, it's time to build the base. Endless, foundational, low-intensity training. At first glance, both of these sound logical, but here's why it's actually the fastest way to store your progress long term. Let's think about the primary thing that occurs here. Let's actually start with base miles. Here's the thing about base miles. This concept started back in the cycling days where athletes race many, many times a year, full of high intensity, and yes, doing a bunch of progressive base miles. And that model is applied to a regular time-starved athlete that is getting ready for events in which they typically race 2, 3, 4 times a year. And now suddenly we're supposed to, when the days are short, typically cold, and there's certainly way less daylight, often rain or snow in there, we are driven to go and add training hours at a boring, low-stress intensity. And it's all about this foundation. But the truth is, for a time-starved athlete, it doesn't integrate into life. Instead, in fact, trying to ram countless hours of training into an already busy life is going to add even more stress, even if we keep it very, very low. And so the concept of how your life is structured doesn't mesh with this concept of base building. Interestingly, in the summer months, where typically people tend to have maybe a little bit more time, certainly the days are longer and the weather tends to be warmer, that's a time where we do get to do a lot of base building time. And in fact, as we are doing an endurance sport, for time-starved athletes, you are able to get outside. It is more intuitive, and the events that we're training for demand quite a lot of low-intensity training anyway. And so I'm not suggesting that zone 1 and zone 2 training is not valuable. I'm also not suggesting that maintaining some zone 1 and zone 2 very easy training in the off season is not critical. It is. But this is not the time of the year where you flip the switch, you increase mileage, while for most athletes, you're going to be having to do that on the bike trainer. It doesn't make any sense, and it's not fun either. And so I would be patient on that. So that's not the first thing. Let's think about the second component that we talk about here, which is the old school view of just stopping training for weeks or months, at least structured training. This is a challenge. This is a problem. Way too many athletes think of off-season as a complete break. And what they don't realize is that stepping away entirely isn't recovery. What it is regression. You lose structure, that's really critical. You lose rhythm. You lose overall foundational fitness. In fact, the magic word of performance for any level of athlete is quite simply consistency. And if you think about consistency over the long arc of a year, how can you establish that if for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, you're stepping away into complete randomness? It's structure that we need. It's maintenance of rhythm. It's ensuring that the musculoskeletal system doesn't regress. Your foundational fitness doesn't regress. And so we're going to show you a different way where you can take a genuine, and I mean this, a genuine mental and physical break while holding on to the key pillars that are going to accelerate your path forward. You see, we always think about that word consistency as the golden thread of progress. If you pull it out, the fabric unravels. On top of that, when you go random and rogue, it is inevitable that your supporting habits tend to regress as well. And that's for many athletes not realizing that the structure of training, the optimization of your planning of your weeks with all of your competing demands of life, of work, and everything else, when you just go random on one of them, you lose that framework. And so daily life actually becomes less productive for people. Then there is this fitness regression, and this is a huge thing. There's a loss of tissue readiness. So you think about your tendons, your muscles, your ligaments' ability to absorb training load. That decline, it regresses. And so you're starting to lose a little bit of readiness to absorb training in the upcoming months. You're actually losing motor programming, the way that your body moves. And you're actually declining even a little bit of confidence, because as you're getting further away from baseline, from what your medium place of starting point is, it's a longer hill to climb to get back up there. What ends up happening is athletes end up feeling stale, unmotivated, and when training does resume, really behind the curve. And this is where bad decision making takes place. Because when you're behind the curve, suddenly you look out in January at that April event and you're like, I've got to get going here. I've got to race. So what tends to happen? The number one mistake of training athletes, accelerating load in terms of intensity or total duration or a combination of both, accelerating load too quickly. That's how the system breaks. That's how we get sick. That's how we get musculoskeletal injuries, etc. And so this is a paradox. When you think about getting rest, turning your back actually ends up creating higher stress, greater inconsistency, and huge physiological regression. And so when we think about off-season, and this is where I want your mindset shift to start to occur, off-season is not an absence of training. In fact, it's a new phase of training. When we say rest, we don't mean random. And that is an absolutely key component. I'll say it again. When we say rest, it doesn't mean go random. And so we want to take some touch points of structured training that is much lighter. This is not a heavy training load, but it's a critical load to anchor your rhythm. And we're going to dive into this. But there are some bolts almost that keep the framework up. And then we're going to stay engaged and consistent, typically amplifying strength training, an infusion of a greater emphasis on technique and movement patterns. And then we're going to keep touch with our endurance activity. And when we do that, what is spawned is greater flexibility, physiological rest and rejuvenation, but not regression. And that is the catalyst for where, when you do turn the focus back on, when you do say in the new year, it's ready to rock and roll, let's go and do this, your body, your mind, your system is ready. And that is a huge point. In fact, I would say that across everything we talk about, when it comes to performance platforms that are broken, where people up level, they have breakout seasons, the one singular common thread that has occurred for every athlete that has gone from here to there, upskilled, up-leveled, breakthroughs, is always, 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 always a fantastically executed off-season. That's it. And so I want you to start to think about off-season as a critical phase of training. And so if the old model is broken, what should off-season actually look like? Well, there's a truth. It's not hitting pause. It's about shifting your gears. It's your chance to recharge, yes, but you're also going to retool. You're going to build a platform. And I think that's a nice lens to look through here. An effective off-season is not about just going out and chasing miles. It's not about going rogue and random. That model is broken. We understand it. But it's a retool, and it's an opportunity to build a platform. That, if you do that, is going to make everything easier and more effective over the course of the coming year. Think about that. It's an investment in yourself. It's really, really good. And so, yeah, from the substance of it, I absolutely agree. You need recovery. You need downtime, physically and mentally. But recovery is active. It's not passive. And so just saying, oh, you know what, I'm just going to turn my back on it. I'm going to go random. I'm going to hop into some classes. I'm going to do some training when I feel like it. I'm going to do whatever. That's a cliff that many athletes don't see climbing. What I'm doing today is grabbing you by the shoulders gently and saying, oh, don't fall off that cliff. Come over here. Because what intuitively sounds like freedom, it does erode your consistency. It kills your motivation. The return uphill is seismic. And so let's recharge, let's retool. Here's the thing you're not doing in off-season under the purple patch banner. You're not chasing fitness. At the last race of your season, as you cross your finish line, hopefully that was the fittest you were over the course of the whole year. That's where training performance meets race day potential, when you are fit. Okay? What we're not doing in this phase of training off season is looking to boost that fitness. Instead, you're building that platform. And we want to have plenty of capacity for what I call soul-filling activities. And so what I want you to shift here, when you think about a productive off-season, is away from what's my output. So what's my power? What's my pace? What heart rate can I hold for XYZ time, etc.? Shift it from output to input. What am I doing to create, retool, to create this foundation and platform of future excellence? So what do I mean by that? Well, number one, technique. This is a critical and important time to improve your stroke mechanics if you do infuse swimming, your running form, your posture, your pedal efficiency. You start to understand how can you transfer the best return relative to how you are holding yourself in the water, on the run, on the bike, on the rowing ergometer, whatever your sport is. So technique is a great time. And when total training stress is low, because it is low in off season, and when we're not chasing output, we're focused on input, it's a great opportunity that you mentally and practically have time to focus on those things. So technical upgrades, great. That's a great journey. Number two, platform. We talked about that. Strength. This is a great opportunity where we're starting to develop the platform of durability in our muscles, our tendons, and our ligaments by really, really focusing on strength and then keeping it going throughout the next year. That is the moment where when you do dial it up and you do have an emphasis on future endurance development, your body is able to absorb and be able to adapt in the best way without the loss of that technique that you have worked so hard to improve. So durability, strength, power potential, all of the work that we're doing on muscles, tendons, and ligaments, this is the time to do it. And the third big area is really quite simply stuff that so often falls out of the back of the focus when the demands are high in training. And that's all of those supported habits. Sleep, Really dialing in at this phase of the year. After all, the days are shorter, so it's really nice to stay in bed a little bit longer. Nutrition. This is the great time of the year that if you do want to shift your body composition for the positive and then dialing in habits now when training stress is low, the body's ready to do it. It's able to do it. Your rhythm of hydration. And in fact, I would say we talked about organizational structure of life and the frame of it. This is a time of year where you establish great organizational effectiveness, that you get very, very good at prioritization, planning, organizing your week, not just for work, not just for life, but these habits and training aspects that we think about. When we get that wrapped in, then you can grow with it. And so, in many ways, the off season for any athlete of any level is your critical performance window, because it really is the things you have, quote, capacity to focus on things that you simply can't, no matter what your willpower is, no matter what your toughness is, no matter what your commitment is, you simply can't do it in the middle of the season. And so, what do we say? Off season isn't just downtime. It's actually upgrade season. It's where you create the chassis to support more horsepower next year. And let me tell you, and here's the counterintuitive thing. By you buying into this, when you finish this episode today and we walk out hand in hand, I'm going to make you a promise. You committing to a really effective off season is not going to be an extraction away from the opportunity for you to focus more on family and work. And this is where you need trust. Because if you're used to stepping away, going random, taking a break, I promise you that when you get the off season right, it can become the very system and your framework that creates the environment that, yes, you absolutely should have much more capacity to spend quality time with family and friends, to invest more in the workplace. You're just leveraging this structure to keep it really, really organized. Because I want to double underline this, heavy training and total commitment of hours is radically lower in off season. You don't need to commit as much. You don't need to be out there for long hours on the bike every single weekend. You don't need to be doing over distance runs. You don't need to do as many training sessions in a week, but you need some anchors, some bolts that hold it all together. And every single time, it's similar to my other promise of every single time I see a performance breakthrough of an athlete, they've always successfully executed off season. That's the number one thing I can think of. Equal to that, every single time that I persuade an athlete to stay engaged, to integrate a really smart phase of training that we label off season, every single time it frees them up. They retain organizational effectiveness. They fuel themselves with greater emphasis on family, friends, work, all over the holidays, etc. But they've got this backbone of organization. And when they move into the new year and they turn it back on again, they're typically really motivated to do so. They're starting from a firmer base. They're less behind the eight ball, and they don't make silly decisions. They make smart decisions, and that is the platform. That's what provides the fuel. And it's a paradox, because I understand it. You think that you're going to drop training structure and it's going to free up more time. Oh, I'll just move it and I'll just put my exercise. I'm going to stay healthy. I'll just put it in the cracks. But what actually occurs is the opposite. You lose those bolts, that anchor, and you lose the training rhythm. Daily life just becomes more chaotic, not less chaotic. Our approach actually makes you more effective in work, more able to spend time, quality time with your family and friends. You're training lighter, but you're consistent. And that's the key message here. It is not about piles of miles. And in fact, what this approach enables you to do is to say, okay, where am I really going to leverage this? I'm training less. I'm building some habits. I'm thinking about technique. I've got a lot of opportunities to do a whole bunch of really fun stuff. And we're going to dig into that over the coming weeks. And I do, want to mentally recharge. I don't want to be driven and obsessed about this thing. I want to make sure that I'm showing up in the work. but it gives you also within this framework an opportunity to pick a project. And we love this at Purple Patch. This is the time that we encourage our athletes to really pick one skill, one little area where you're really going to improve over the coming 8 to 12 weeks of off season. What is the thing where you're going to move your performance needle? It's not about fitter, stronger, powerful, more powerful, faster. We're not chasing outputs. But what's a project that's going to have a really positive impact in your future? This keeps the brain challenged. This keeps developing the parts of the brain that enable us to navigate different stresses, become really adaptable, navigate challenges, etc. We want to keep the brain challenged. So even though you've got this lower structure, this lower training emphasis, less hours, less sessions, pick a project. So it could be swim technique. I'm actually going to become a better swimmer this year. At Purple Patch, and we'll dig into this over the coming weeks, at Purple Patch, we have swim school, led by myself and Coach John, where we're having a round table. We're supporting with people that have picked a swim project, going to really focus on swimming technique, do some specific drills. We're not chasing outputs right here. Get feedback, dive into some video analysis. I want to become a better swimmer technically. This is the time to do it. It's fun. You feel progression. Maybe it's about breaking the injury cycles of running, where you're going to do a lot of technical development on running. You're going to do really frequent running. You're not going to swim as much. You're not going to bike as much. But we're going to build a platform that you've got great tissue health. It's not about training to get faster at running right now. It's about training so that you are ready to train to get faster in your running. And that's an easy thing that's convenient. Maybe it's actually for the once in your life committing to strength training. I'm a living example of this. I got sick of myself last year. I was talking about the importance of strength, but the truth is, I didn't really like it. I didn't do it that often. I always fell off the wagon. And so last year, I committed around this time, and I said, I'm going to do an off-season project. I'm going to do strength. My commitment to myself and to everyone around me, my team at Purple Patch, my family, said, I'm going to do strength twice a week. Well, here we are, about a year later, and I've nailed it. You know what the outcome of that is? I feel better than I have in years. I actually can't quite believe, as the performance coach that prescribes it all the time, I can't believe how much better I feel. A simple strength twice a week. It's improved my performance. It's improved my cognitive function. It's improved my energy. I will never stop doing strength again. And it just took me at the right time of the year when I had capacity to just commit. And so we can all do this. But what you should do, and we'll dig into the details of this, is write it down, make an off-season project, and you can do this. That's about doing it right. So let's just dig into, in this summary, I've persuaded you, off-season is broken as a model. Turning your back piles of miles, it's nonsense. Instead, you have a system, a phase of training where you get to recharge, you get to spend more time with your family, friends, work, but you get to retain the organizational structure. You ensure that you have a through line of consistency, the magic word of performance, and you create a chance to retool, to upgrade, to create a platform that is a catalyst for a huge 2026. So when you're doing this, you want to get really practical. What does it look like in action? Well, next year, next week, I should say, we're going to peel this apart. We're going to dig into how you should actually, nuts and bolts, how you should build an off-season. But let me at least give a flash of insight right now. Let's break it down. How do you actually retain structure where you're not continuing to burn out, but you're also not regressing? It's pretty simple. Number one, training shift. Drop the volume. Okay, intensity generally lighter, but focus on sharper. There is some high intensity. We'll dig into that next week, but generally you're not doing as many training sessions. If you typically do 10 sessions in a week, many people do that. So training most days and sometimes a little bit of a double. If you're doing 10, you might be down at 4, 5, 6 sessions, more capacity. You're also doing less total training hours. That 3, 4, 5 hour bike ride on Saturday, probably dials it down a little bit. That 90 minute to 2 hour run on Sunday, you dial it down a little bit. Volume down, intensity generally lighter, focus sharper. Okay, great. Number 2, you're going to invest in resilience. We're going to dig into that next week. A lot of tissue strength, mobility, movement, mechanics. And then number 3, you want to add something very simple. You're going to add some joy and some variety. I love athletes to expand their horizons in off-season. That might include infusion of gravel rides, some snow mountain biking, some hiking, some yoga, some skiing, all of this stuff that wraps around this structure. You should absolutely go and play. And there should be space for it. And it should be fun, it should be soul-filling, it should be a different stimulus on the body. And so you're going to go around and you just have these anchor sessions. As we talked about, if you're doing 10 to 12 hours, just anchor it, 3 to 4 workouts. You might do more than that, but just anchor the really key and supporting stuff. And then, as we're going to dig into, you double down on the habits. You nail your sleep schedule. You establish your right hydration schedule. You eat really balanced fuel. You don't need to pump yourself full of gels and sugars at this time. You create this foundational platform of really good eating habits that you're going to retain all next year. And you establish patterns of planning, prioritization, and organizational effectiveness that you can carry with you. And it's going to help you drive integration of more training as you have to train more to get ready for next year's events that can ensure that you retain effectiveness. Because training will ramp up, but you want to stay effective. You want to show up your best version of yourself for your responsibilities in work and for your family and friends. And so this is not, as it becomes clear, fitness maintenance. This is not taking a break. This is a phase of training. Skill, resilience, habit building. And can I say it any more times? It is the number one thing you can do. If you have ambitions, if you have goals, if you're frustrated with your last year and you want to reverse the trend now, do this phase of training. This is, and I don't ask for much, ladies and gentlemen, but off season, this is everything. This is everything. If you get this in place, I promise you, it's one of the only promises I can give you in the crazy world of sport. If you dial in your off season, you are going to be in a better place when you start and you dial it up. You're going to be more motivated. You're going to feel like you're in control. You're going to feel confident. Your body is going to be ready to absorb and you're going to have capacity. It's going to help you. Alrighty? You are not chasing numbers. You are building capacity. And that's it. It doesn't take much. The truth is that you want to build a minimal effective rhythm. A couple of strengths, a couple of endurance sessions, technique sessions, soul-filling activity, whatever you like, surfing, trail running, skiing, whatever it is, you're going to be done. And the results for this, when you get this right, when you shift your mindset, your structure, your training, you commit to consistency without overload, the results are powerful. You're not maintaining, you are actually accelerating. But the results of the acceleration emerge over the course of the coming year. Let me take a picture of what this looks like when you nail it. Well, firstly, in the immediate term, you feel more free. You have control, you retain control, but training starts to feel fun again. You're getting a mental reset without the just absolute disconnection. And the rhythm carries into your family and life. You show up better. In the long term, you've got the ability to ramp up faster in the spring. There's no getting back into shape and going through that pain. And on top of it, you've got greater durability, much lower injury risk. And you've got tangible breakthroughs to start to see. More power, more speed, better efficiency. Everything comes from that same training load that you did before. It's not about getting ready to train more next year. It's about getting more out of the squeeze of the sponge of next year. And on top of it, you've established great habits that are going to stay with you and fuel your performance readiness. Great athletes are not made in the peak season. They're made in the off season. And that sounds cheesy, but it's actually true. Let me remind you, the greatest mistake athletes make is seeing off-season as a gap between seasons. That thinking is the lost opportunity. Off-season is its own training phase, and when you get it right, when you focus on strength, habits, technique, small projects, it becomes the single biggest predictor of a performance breakthrough in the following year. That's where 2026 actually begins now. And so define your off-season. Define what the win is. What does success look like? Do you want to maybe try and build up to where you can squat your body weight with good form? That would be an amazing platform. Do you want to be able to reduce your stroke count 2 to 3 per length without losing stroke rate? Do you want to be able to run really consistently where run actually becomes fun and you don't get injured every other week and you actually just feel like I can go and do whatever I want in my running? What is it? Measure it, commit to it, celebrate it, then let that fuel your 2026. And so that's it. That's the headline. This is the introduction to off-season. It is your off-season reimagined. It's not a pause. It's a performance accelerator. This is where you build your durability. You cement your habits. You set yourself up for breakthroughs. Next week, what we're going to do is dive into the weeds a little bit. I'm going to show you exactly how we craft the Purple Patch off-season plan. If you're a coach listening, I'm hoping that you can draw from our approach to apply it to your athletes so that you can help them be more successful. If you're self-coached, I hope you can also learn and apply some principles to your own journey. And if you're an athlete that is going on a journey with Purple Patch right now, I want you to cement your mindset and ensure that you're doubled down to executing it right. I want you all to be able to take these principles and map them into a clear, simple, actionable framework for your own success. It's not a vacation. It's an accelerator. That's what it is. Redefine it. We want to make sure you get your recovery, but set yourself up for outsized breakthroughs. Next week, I'm going to show you. We're going to do the deep dive, the off-season framework. I'm going to allow you to peek behind the curtain of Purple Patch, and it's going to transform your 2026 season. We are good to go. Let's do it, team. I hope that's helpful. Guys, thanks so much for joining, and thank you for listening. I hope that you enjoyed the new format. You can never miss an episode by simply subscribing. Head to the Purple Patch channel of YouTube and you will find it there and you could subscribe. Of course, I'd like to ask you, if you will subscribe, also share it with your friends, and it's really helpful if you leave a nice positive review in the comments. Now, any questions that you have, let me know. Feel free to add a comment and I will try my best to respond and support you on your performance journey. And in fact, as we commence this video podcast experience, if you have any feedback at all, as mentioned earlier in the show, we would love your help in helping us to improve. Simply email us at info@purplepatchfitness.com or leave it in the comments of the show at the Purple Patch page and we will get you dialed in. We'd love constructive feedback. We are in a growth mindset, as we like to call it. And so feel free to share with your friends. But as I said, let's build this together. Let's make it something special. It's really fun. We're really trying hard to make it a special experience. And we want to welcome you into the Purple Patch community. With that, I hope you have a great week. Stay healthy. Have fun. Keep smiling, doing whatever you do. Take care.